What's going on YouTube? Welcome to episode 132 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. If you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button helping me and supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And of course, don't forget to check out the Discord. I'll have a link in the description below. Right now I'm doing a poll on what my next ship build is going to be, so if you want to participate in that after you join the Discord, click on next ship build poll and you'll be able to vote on a list of builds that I've accumulated off my most popular requests. Now, for whatever reason, if there's something that's not on that list that you'd like to see me do, that's okay. All you have to do is click on build suggestions where you can drop your build suggestion down. Now, going forward, this is going to be the only way I'm going to be taking suggestions from people, just so I can keep everything in one place, and it'll be a way that people can actually see what has been suggested and upvote that if that's something that they want. Anyway, hopping into today's episode, we've got about just under a 15-minute episode, and we're down in the belly of our ship, or we're going to be. Right now we're on the medical deck on the top, so we're going to be going down here in just a few moments, and we're going to be working on our holodecks, which will be pretty cool. I've been looking forward to doing the holodecks for a little while now, and today is going to be the actual day that we hop into it. Alright, so now we're down in our entertainment deck. We are on the left and right side. Now we're going to be building our holodecks off of those secondary turbo lifts that we had made. So you see I've counted out, I'm going off the turbo lift. Because we're actually going to have, when this is done, there will be 8 sets of holodecks. One of them will be active, the rest will be in, I guess, standby mode or off mode. But I assume that the Enterprise D would have several holodecks on the ship. And I've actually been really looking forward to doing this because I've messed around with the idea of doing a holodeck, and I believe I did that on the Cerritos, but it was much more on a small scale. One of the cool things with the Enterprise D, building in the scale that we've built it in, have the luxury of having all this extra room to expand things out and make it a little bit more grandiose. So that's what we'll be doing with at least one of these holodecks. Where we can actually flesh it out and build it out where it's been activated, and we're going to base that off of the Big Goodbye, which was pretty much the main focal point almost any time that they went into the holodeck. Not everyone, they had variations of it, but I think that would be something really cool to do. Now these cuts that we're making in the floor, or excuse me, in the doorways, on the entertainment deck. We're going to be doing this on the crew deck and then also the medical deck. However, those cuts won't obviously be holodecks. They'll be for designated for smaller crew quarters as well as the medical science areas on the third deck. But to save a little bit of time, as you guys can see, I'm doing this all at once. I'm building out all 4 or all 8 of my holodeck entries at the entryways at the same time. And this is actually pretty cool. I've been waiting to get to this point because we've spent a considerable amount of time, not necessarily backtracking, but we've spent a considerable amount of time working in certain areas of the ship. And this portion of the tutorial, we're going to be getting a ton of work done, because we'll be in the entertainment deck for a little while, but we'll be working on a variety of things, from the holodecks to the observation lounges. There's going to be mess hall. There's going to be somewhat of a farm that we're going to have for livestock and actual live vegetation, as opposed to just building or using something from a replicator. I'm trying to think of what else. There are quite a few things. The fencing area where Picard had his fencing matches, that'll be on this deck. Um, the jiu-jitsu ring where Riker and his dad had those fights, that'll be on this deck. Um, Dodgeball, that was another thing that was in Star Trek: The Next Generation with Picard and Wesley. I think it was only in one episode, but it still appeared. That'll be something. Um, so yeah, I mean, I tried to incorporate a lot of cool things on this deck. And even that being said, there's still going to be more room to add more things on it. I'm not sure if all those things are going to make it in the tutorial at this point. I think it's pretty much safe to say that I'm done taking suggestions on the tutorial on things that people would like me to incorporate. Just because that we still have a stretch of road ahead of us that we need to cross, and we're already at episode 132, and I'm going to try to cut corners as much as I can on the remainder of the tutorial series without jeopardizing the quality of it. So basically what that's going to entail is that we're not going to flesh out as much of the interior as I was initially planning to. And just for the sole reason of not having a 300 plus series tutorial, I wasn't even expecting this to go over 100 episodes. It just kind of snowballed into that due to the scale of this thing. I've had some people who are like, hey, you build a full-scale Enterprise D. Man, y'all are trying to kill me with that stuff. I'm not even kidding, because it's taken me literally over a year working on the Enterprise D. I can honestly say this is a half scale. I feel comfortable with using that number because my Enterprise is 24 decks and a full-scale Galaxy class is 44 decks. So it's about half the size, which is insane when you actually think about that, the actual sheer size of a Galaxy class ship. And on top of that, building it out in the maximum render distance that we had to be able to see almost all the ship. If I had made this thing twice the size that it currently is, there's no way we would have been able to use the render distance as a way to proportion out the ship. So there would have been issues with that. And then on top of that, I would have been working on it for the next 5 years. And yeah, that's a crazy amount of time to put into a build. I'm happy to put in the time that I put in so far in the half-scale Enterprise D. But I'm pretty certain that this will be the last mega build that I do going forward, unless it's something that I have to do it. I wouldn't expect to see me do something this large again, just because of the amount of time that it's taken me to do it in, because I've even had a couple of people here and there be like, hey, do a couple of smaller builds in between. And I've tried to do a little bit of that, with a couple of different episodes. Like I've done my discussion episodes on the Enterprise A 1.1. But as far as doing a full-on smaller tutorial while I'm working on the Enterprise D, you got to understand something, that it's just me building out this thing. And I'm trying to avoid getting myself distracted like I did with the Cerritos. Not that I didn't do a good job on the Cerritos. I still felt that I fleshed out what I could have fleshed out with it based off of the reference material that I had. But I also, towards the tail end of the Cerritos, I started working on the Enterprise D. And this is just the type of person I am when I start working on a build. If it's something that I can get emotionally invested in, once it starts coming together, I get really, really excited. And it's like, okay, I start going into overdrive, working on it even more and more and more. And that's what basically happened between the Cerritos and the Enterprise D, that once I got to a certain point where I had the general shell of the Enterprise D done, I got really, really excited, and I really just started focusing on that a lot more. And I just made the decision, like, well, I've done everything I feel like that I need to do on the Cerritos at this time. There were maybe a couple of things that I probably could have done on the Cerritos, but really not that much more than what I had. Maybe a couple of extra quarters, but that's pretty much about it. But that's really, the reason why I've decided, I'm going to do these things one at a time as far as doing these bigger builds. Because the Enterprise D, it's taken up a lot of time to get this thing done. And it's not even necessarily been a bad thing. It's actually been kind of good, but it's forced me to go back and watch a lot of Next Generation to get, to do your research on this stuff because, I mean, I grew up watching Next Generation, and I've got a couple of the Prestige DVDs where like they have like a collection of the best episodes of TNG for like the Borg, and it's not even necessarily TNG, it's just Star Trek in general, where like I'll have like the best episodes of the Borg for all the shows and the movies. And I have the other one for time travel, and I've seen those, but it had been a while since I'd gone back and actually rewatched the show. And that's been pretty cool because there have been some things that I've added into the ship because I started watching the show again that I probably wouldn't have added if I hadn't seen it. Now you can see I'm doing this very gingerly as far as adding in uh, my holodecks, and especially on the left side here because the closest side to our mall here is going to be the hardest part about this, but it's really not. I was just kind of trying to get a gauge for how big these things were going to be because I didn't want to make them super big, but they had to be big enough to where I could do the cross pattern of the holodeck and be able to sell that. And what ultimately we're going to have to do with that is we're going to have to actually cut out a little bit of the floor from the mall, which really isn't a big deal. That was the only thing that I ended up having to do, and we'll just have to replace it with carpeting when we're actually inside the mall when we flesh out the rest of that. But no, this was something that I really wanted to have on the build was the holodecks because this was something that was just such a vital part of Next Generation. Um, I would have been doing a disservice to the ship if I didn't at least include it. And it's not even a super complicated build. Um, Building these things out, and like we won't get to all of it today, but I think pretty much I went through and I looked through the rest of the episodes this week. This is what we're mostly going to be working on because we'll be doing the initial shape and design of the deactivated holodeck, and then we'll be building out the the activated holodeck. I think we'll start it and then we'll pan back to it a little bit later on. No, because this was something I was considering too, and it's like I was originally going to have all these different crew quarters on the middle deck, and that's something that will still be on the ship, but I'm not going to end up having those in the tutorial because I've already done the base template for what the um, crew quarters should look like. So there's really no point in double tapping that and just doing the basically the same tutorial again at a different section of the ship. So I think what I'll do there is any areas that I cut out that will be crew quarters, I'll just point those areas out for those of you that want to be able to expand upon your crew quarters. I may add those off camera. I may not. I may just close the doors up and say that's where the crew quarters are. I think for me at this point, my main focus for the interior is getting a lot of the entertainment deck done. For the recreational areas that we saw in the Next Generation, because there are quite a few of them, and then also doing some of the science deck. The science deck probably won't be as much as an entertainment deck, because I think it'll be down to having Crusher's office and maybe a couple of labs that would go into that, but um, outside of that, I can't really think of anything else that I would do. But yeah, no, like I think I'm at the point where like I'm not taking any more suggestions. I'm really trying to get this thing done so this way we can get into the next build, because I'm going to be a man of my word with that. As soon as I'm done working on the Enterprise D, not the tutorial itself, but the day that I'm physically done building it, I'm going to stop the poll on the Discord, and whatever ship wins out, that's going to be the one that I'm going to do. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be Voyager. It's got the most requests or most upvotes out of any of the other builds that I currently have. So I think that's going to be what we're ultimately going to be doing next, which will be cool. I'm looking forward to doing Voyager. Voyager will be a challenge in itself with that lower hull. I can already see it now, but I think it'll be a lot of fun to do it. All right. We're looking pretty good. We're looking pretty good. So we've got our template in place for our holodeck, and you can see I've got like these two rods coming back and then this one in the front here. This may not make all that much sense right now, but it will in the next episode, because I'm basically forming our dimensions on how big the room is going to be. We've got our width going left and right, and then we've got our width going forward and backwards. So now with that, we can establish the grid for how big this room will be, and then we just need to determine the ceiling. But again, it won't be too bad. But we'll get into that later on in the week. I think that's going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. And hey, if you did enjoy this content, please help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button, help me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so you get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can always catch my new Minecraft episodes dropping Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. If you have any questions regarding today's episode, just dropping by to say hey. Be sure to drop a comment below or in the Discord. I definitely love hearing from everybody. And yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week. And I'll catch you in the next episode. And of course, what did you make in Minecraft today? Let me know in the comments section.